everybody. Welcome to the newest episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits. I'm Mike Farah, and no, you're not seeing anything. It is just me today. It is another Mike on the Mic episode. I know it seems like Orrin and I are sort of dueling interviews right now, but it's my turn now, and we have a fantastic guest for you today. His name is ChrisCross, and Chris has been in the industry for near probably a little bit over 30 years. He broke in really big time with the Milestone imprint, Blood Syndicate to be precise, although he worked on some of the other titles, and kind of bounced around the industry from there, worked at Marvel, DC, big run on Captain Marvel with Peter David, and did some work with Firestorm, created the character of Jason Rush, and now he is working on something with our old pal Joe Illidge. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that after the interview, but it comes out January 31st, at least the taste of a new graphic novel that will be coming out probably in 2025. But let's get to it. Let's hear from ChrisCross himself. When and how did you first discover comic books?
Wow. I think I discovered comics when I was, 5? And the first one I ever really touched was an Archie book, I think it was. It was a series of Archie books. And some of them were like just nondescript stuff you probably wouldn't even recognize. So I can't remember the exact name, but it was like two of these very, very cartoony characters. And I can't seem to remember the name of it. But I was in my grandmother's house and she had a couple of them lying around. They were like 20 cents, maybe 15 cents. And I was kind of reading through them. And then the book that really got me into comics was it Kill Raven or was it? Oh no, it was X-Men 119.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I was like, I think that's Moses Magnum, I think.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that. I mean, that was just like right down the street from my house when I was used to live in Brooklyn way back in the 70s. So they had it hanging on top of one of his bodegas. Like, it was like a string. It had like comics kind of hanging by his spine.
Right.
And I saw that, and I saw Spider-Man and something. I think it was a Marvel team up. And then I saw there was Kill Raven. And I think I want to get Kill Raven, and I want to getting the X-Men 119. And I saw that, I was like, okay, X-Men it is. So, and then from there, I just had the voracious appetite in reading comics. But back in the days too, showing how far back I go, there used to be these reading mobiles that used to come, I think it was Riff.
I remember those
Reading
actually.
is fundamental. It's because
Yeah, right.
Riff, reading is fundamental. They used to have these like reading mobiles just to show up at your house in your neighborhood. And they still have the Spider-Man / Electric Company type comics.
Yep.
So Morgan Freeman was on there a long time ago, way before he got really big. And we used to stop by. We used to pick up. They used to give the books away, and we used to just grab a lot of them. We just sat down in front of our stoop and just sat down and read those books. But that's when they used to try to get you reading back in the days. I don't know what's going on now. So, I mean, some people read, they still don't understand words.
Believe it or not, I mean, yeah, I don't know about they don't have the mobiles maybe anymore, but comics are big in elementary school. My daughter is like hooked on now. They're not the superhero comics,
Right.
they're more the serialized sort of like kids graphic novels, but they're certainly like a big gateway to reading, whereas they used to be like stigmatized. You're like, what's that trash, that you're reading, get a real book.
It's kind of weird, right? Because that would be trash. But funny enough, if I'm not mistaken about Stan Lee, at one particular point, he was advocating that they would put collegiate words in those books so they can force kids to actually go and look at dictionaries to read what they just saw so they can be able to understand words and you retain them. That helped me a lot when I was growing up. Because I had when I was in kindergarten, I had like a college level reading level.
Wow. Yeah.
And I had a college level math level also, but I don't know what happened after that. I was doing pretty well in those studies, but that definitely my reading comprehension was very, very like off the charts, mostly because I kept reading those books.
Yeah, the
Yeah, the words,
vocabulary
yeah. So you
is
want to know
higher.
why these characters were saying what they were saying. So you want to be like, not knowing what's under, what you were actually reading. So you wanted to make sure that if you repeated it, you knew you were being Captain America at that point. So, it was a good vehicle to get kids to read, but that's cool that they're still doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Did you also have like the collecting bug from early on? Like, do you have that X-Men and Killraven issue still?
The Hellraiser, no. The X-Men, that original X-Men issue, no. That stuff that was a bad story, but let's say I lost a lot of those books, and I
Yeah.
want to rekindle some of those books later on. But I think some of that stuff is still at my mother's house, and like in her basement, and wrapped up in boxes and stuff. And then other stuff that I have around here, or just like in another storage container, probably will not be in there either. But I read that book 90 different times at least. Just going right back to reread it all over again. Yeah, that 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 was my love for X Men back in the days, and we know X Men is nothing like the way it used to be now. So, but it's yeah, that's some of the stuff that really got me into it. But they started me reading Fantastic Four for some reason, and
Mm,
that's really my favorite characters in Marvel.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, X-Men was a good gateway, depending on when you got into them, right? So at some point they got so complex that they were not a good gateway into the rest of the like Marvel heroes and stuff. It got a little complicated, but if you get them at the right time, they're good, good gateway to the rest of the Marvel universe. And then Fantastic Four is obviously a really great
Yeah,
introduction.
can't beat the first family, boy.
Exactly. So when did you realize like right off the bat that there were people, some people sort of like you're reading the story, you get really into it, but when did you realize that there was like people making these and there was like an industry behind it that you can possibly be a part of? Like, were you all originally like seeing a comic and I want to work here. I want to do this. I want to draw these.
I was like drawing them. I didn't really think I'd be a part of it. I always thought I'd be an architect.
Hmm.
I started off trying to be that, and then I realized, you could draw buildings and these things. So I said, why don't I just do that? Probably should have went for the architect. You make a whole lot more money, I'm sure, but going forward, you know, jumping into comics, you have to have a serious love for them, and especially if you're, freelancing like the way I do. I've been doing this 33 years now, so my love for them hasn't gone yet. My brain is not just attuned to trying to do my own now, but I still, of course, I jump back and forth from Marvel and DC and a whole bunch of others. But I would love to be able to put my own stuff out at some point, which I'm hoping it might be hopefully this year. We'll see how it goes. Try to get some Kickstarter. So Kickstarter, crowdfunding. I won't say Kickstarter because everyone says Kickstarter and say crowdfunding, but you know,
Yeah.
I may get something crowdfunding to see how it goes.
Yeah, that's the way a lot of the industry is moving, and it gives you a lot of creative control and freedom, and to do the things you want to do. So,
Also,
I,
you have a lot of stories you want to tell. A lot of times, those stories you can't really tell through, through the big two or through mainstream. So, you kind of have to do. That's why we have independence, right?
hmm
That's what they're here for. They're there for. So we'll have
exactly.
Nexus without it.
All right. So, when did when and how did you break into the actual industry? I read that you were at the School of Visual Arts, right, in New York?
Yeah, I was at the School of Visual Arts. But before I did that, I was also, I was trying to break it way before then. I did start working with a particular guy at a comic book store. He was putting together some sort of a barbarian book called Cray. Way,
Hmm.
way, way back in the days. Like I used to live in Brooklyn a long time with Coney Island, so I used to stop off at this store. I can't remember the name of it. It was in on Notion Avenue in Brooklyn. So I used to run over there like every other Friday, if not every Friday, pick up my new books. And the guy who was writing the stuff owned the store, but he was also managed. He was also trying to get his own set of books out, and it was kind of a good thing to kind of get myself started. But I realized that really, really early that some people can be not exactly the most savory when it comes to their attitudes and their behaviors, and they expected certain things out of you early, and if things didn't happen the way that they wanted, they had bad attitudes, which I was not good with.
Hmm.
So I think I put a lot of work into that. I think it's supposed to be like 4 books I was working with this guy, and he never really had the money for me like ready at hand. Even then, I was like, "You better pay me." I think it was like around what 16, 17 at the time, and I was just like, as I was working hard on to get the stuff done, the more and more I got him more pages, just less and less contact I was getting with the guy. So I was like, I think the first book, actually, he managed to put out the first book, and then some person inked my stuff when I should have inked it myself, and it was horrible. I was so angry about it. It's like once I saw that, it kind of disillusioned me for a bit. I was like, I think I should start handling my own stuff from here on in. So I think I went to my first convention, and I think it was in New York. I think New York they didn't be having like a New York Comic Con per se back then, but they used to have like hotels that would like kind of sponsor them here and there. Sometimes Marvel would have people there, and I got a hold. I think Mike Zeck was there, and I just know I knew I was talking to him at the time. And right next to across from him was a Marvel editor who was looking at people's stuff. He said some stuff that didn't make any sense to me. And I was like, that he could not critique my stuff well. He was just saying some weird stuff, and I was looking at him, and I was like, "What is he talking about?" And Mike said, "Come over here, come over." And I said, "Let me see your stuff." Right. So he started looking at it. He said, "You have a lot of good talent. You just have certain things you have to work on, but as soon as you get a chance, like work on this and come on back next year, see what you got, and I'll make sure that I put you in the right hands with the right editorial staff, so you be able to show them your work." So I said, "Okay." And
Wow.
that was my first intro, like literally into the hands of the industry. So it was like Mike Zeck. If anybody don't know who Mike Zeck is, go look it up. The
Yeah.
guy's
I
an
mean,
amazing artist.
I mean, having a champion like Mike Zeck in your corner, that's a big leg up.
hmm And then I tried to get through. Someone was telling me I couldn't get into well, it's way before the internet. So um, I'm probably one of the last, probably the last generation that can actually say that. The way before the internet. But there was Rich Buckler was a person that I got a hold of, and he was telling me I wasn't really going to be able to get into comics unless I was a part of his club. They always had people that they were kind of hire in. They come in, they kind of volunteer their services, and kind of I guess they run coffee for them and stuff like that. That's kind of like how Dennis Cowan set up. Um, one of the founders of Milestone. Anyone who knows comics understands who Dennis Cowan is. So he was one of the guys kind of hanging with Rich Buckler at the time, and he was telling me my best bet to get into the industry was be able to work through him. And I said, you know what? I'm thinking about if I have to come from Coney Island to go to Manhattan every single day to go do this, and I'm not getting paid, I'm not doing it, right? So I didn't tell him that. I just said, nah, I think I'll work it out myself. I'll find a way to get in, and I did eventually. It took
Yeah, and
me going to college to do it, but that's what I did. I think that was around when I was probably around the same time when I was around 16, 15, 16.
you eventually you got into comics. Maybe not your first assignment, but very close to your first assignment was with Milestone, and which Dennis was a part of, right?
Yeah, by that time they had already set up. They were already realized as Milestone Media. Him, at that time, Michael Davis. It was Dwayne McDuffie, um, Derek Dingle, um, and I think Christopher Priest was also a part of it, but he had pretty
Yeah,
much left by the time I got there.
right.
So a friend of mine named Brian Marshall, who did Interpop, I think it was called. There was like an online comic company. He was doing some digital comic stuff. Um, hopefully I got the right name. Interpop. It should be Interpop. I forget it again, but I was kind of helping him out. But I met him in high school, and someone an art teacher named Mr. All I know is I think it was John, but his last name was Sorensen. He saw me kind of doodling around in art class. He was like, "I'm going to take you to this guy. He's actually putting out comics and stuff, and I think he really would like to see your stuff." I actually called him up. We're supposed to be going maybe like on a Friday during the school day. Just be prepared, be ready to go. So I said, okay. I brought a whole bunch of my portfolio stuff, and he took me to at that point I started living in Colion, so it's like around maybe about 2-3 miles away from where I lived at, and we went to this house. Now back then you would think to yourself, okay, you should be a little bit more wary, even though a teacher, you just go in some stranger's house, but I trusted the guy because he was a pretty cool dude. So when I got there, Brian Marshall was inside, and he's running Lowstone. I think it was Lowstone Comics at the time. He was running. He had the licenses for Thunder Agents, and he was doing some other stuff too. And I know because I was actively collecting those books. So I was like, oh, this is the guy that's doing it. And funny enough, as I'm walking through his house, or the office that he was using, the house that he was using, house he was using as an office. Can't talk today. Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman were there.
Wow.
And this way before they got big.
Yeah.
So we shook hands, we were talking, and I said, oh, that's the cat that did that book. That book is going nowhere. Boys are wrong. So, but I left my stuff there with Brian. We kind of went through all the precursor stuff that he was looking for. And I just thought it'd be really cool if I was able to I think around this time I was 17 going to 18. So I was just about to graduate my last year in high school. So I thought it'd be really cool if I could just jump right on in through high school. And of course that didn't happen, but I mean, me and Brian kind of kept connected through the years. So he'll kind of do stories, feed stuff to me, keep me drawing. And then I met up with him when I was working at what was then called A&S Mall in Manhattan. It took over from a store called Gimbel's. It was on 34th Street. And when they changed everything over, there was a comic book shop that was literally on the same level as on the place I was working at. I was working like at a sneaker store called Athlete's Foot. And I came walking in, I'm talking to this guy in this comic shop, not realizing I'm talking to the guy, Brian. And I told him, I thought he's a really good, really cool dude, man. He's supposed to hit me back about some stuff. I wonder what happened. I guess he's kind of disappeared. He said, I'm Brian Marshall. I'm Brian Marshall, man. I said, really? Oh, how you doing, man? So, but he was the one that told me about Milestone.
Yeah.
He was telling me there's a bunch of Black creators that was leaving, Marvel, leaving, not working with DC, coming up with their own stuff. And they were putting out some Black characters. As far as he knew, it was just Black. Sorry, excuse me. And so he told me where they were at and how I should investigate it, because at that time I was just about, I think it was my first year in School of Visual Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some more research to find exactly where they were. And then I took the time I just went up there cold. I didn't call. I just said I was going in to meet some people to see what's going on. And when I walked into the offices, it's basically this loft, very, very large loft, where you just walked in, and then they had the office manager was on one side, and there's everything's kind of corridoring off. You can see the offices of where Dwayne and Michael Davis and a couple of other people were kind of chilling at. So I said, okay. I think Matt Wayne was there also. And then I brought up a whole bunch of Xerox stuff that I put together so I could just leave it with them. And literally after, going through some sort of shenanigans with them, it was kind of funny. The way they saw me, and then they kind of looked at the stuff, and it was just like, wait a minute, don't leave yet. Don't leave. So I said, okay. I didn't know what was happening. And then, Dwayne McDuffie comes out. He's like 6'6" at the time. So I was like, finally, someone who's my size. I didn't realize he was that big. He went in, looked at me, went back into the office. Dennis Cowan came out, he looked at me, turned around, went into another office. Derek Dingle comes out. He's looking at the stuff. And then Michael Davis said, you drew this stuff? I said, yeah. And then went right back in the offices again. I'm like, what is happening here? So finally, at the end of all of it, I wanted to walk out on an assignment. So once we did that, then the first assignment I ever had was the cards that they were putting out at the time. So I think the first was to Aquamaria, but I think that was the first one. And then they wound up giving me Blood Syndicate as a group to do as a card set. And then once they saw I performed that, then they actually gave me the book. They started the third book. So now I'm like going to college full time, trying to make assignments, and at the same time on the other side trying to make the assignments that paid. So, and I found I wasn't the only one doing it. There was other people in my classes that might have snagged some Marvel assignments or some DC assignments or some assignment, and I had to kind of work through college
Right.
doing that stuff and doing college stuff, the SVA stuff at the same time. So, if you know, art college is not the same as any other college. So it was definitely a lot of drawing, a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, we've heard stories from, artists that are not doing the college stuff and just doing the work, and they're just sleepless nights anyway. So
Yeah,
having to balance both, I mean, must have been,
it
kind of
was
a big
crazy. I think I might have, there
big
was one
assignment.
particular time where I think when I was in the midst of doing, I think it was the third issue, my first issue was the third issue.
Right.
I think I might have been hitting at the fifth issue at this point because it bypassed the fourth one. And I think at that one particular week, I had maybe 10 hours of sleep total. And I was young, so I could probably get away with it. But
Yeah.
I think at one point, my body gave out on me. I could not get out of bed. Like, literally, my father had to pull me out of bed. And he's like, I think you're overdoing it, son. You know? And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm overdoing it. So I basically took the rest of the day just to sleep everything off. And I said to myself, I was never going to put myself through that again. I wish I had listened to myself then. Because,
Yeah.
if you get assignments, you got to get stuff done pretty quickly. You're missing sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
hear you. So how was it cutting your teeth on basically kind of new characters, right? So you maybe in your mind, maybe not, but you were thinking like I'm gonna break into comics and get on, all these familiar characters from my youth or whatever. But you're all of a sudden you're on this new company which is very dynamic and great new characters. Was that like thrilling to you to be able to like contribute to new characters, or were you like, oh man, I didn't get Superman or whatever else?
No, I was, funny enough, uh, Brian Marshall had a conversation. We always had conversations back in the day. So when he told me about these guys putting stuff together, I knew I was going in for characters that was going to be obscure, an independent company, so to speak, because it was kind of an independent company. It was also being published by DC at that point. It wasn't the same kind of situation that's happening now. So they had more. Milestone had more control of the type of characters they're putting out there. And it was, I've been having to read a ton of independent books all the time, so I know it's new stuff that I would have to draw. As long as I had the reference for it, it wasn't a big deal. Which is why I got the assignment because I did the kind of the first version of them in that card set.
Right.
I basically was a big poster of them kind of doing some kind of dynamic. Hey, we're Blood Syndicate, and they just kind of cut it into 9 different cards. So I was at that particular point. I kind of knew what I was drawing, and at that point, I think Ivan Velez, who was writing it, was pretty much new also. I mean, he was there before me, but I think not by much though. I think he had already put out two other books. I think Trevor Von Eden was the first one. Maybe might have been the first one drawing it. I'm trying to remember the second brother. They'll come to me, but yeah. So by that time, there was enough material for me to draw from. So, once I got the third book, I was already kind of drawing some stuff. I was really into Jim Lee at the time, and people knew I was kind of very influenced by John Byrne back in the days, among other people, Neil Adams, Walt Simonson, these big cats. So, um, my brain was already attuned to watching a ton of anime and stuff like that at that point, also. So, dynamicism was always a big part of what I was doing. So it was just easy to kind of just bring that into those particular characters. So, if you think about the first book, real book you're ever going to draw, you're drawing freaking like 9 characters, and you have to try to make them all fit.
Yeah.
It took a while to figure out how to do, how to tell the story because a lot of times when I was drawing, I think up until the point where I was drawing, I think maybe the 7th issue, Dennis had a conversation with me. He's like, I'm going to ask you the question, why? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, um, I understand every single panel you do has these, everything is just like this, blah, rah, but there's no, you know. And I said, well, if I do that, no one's gonna look at the panel. He said, that's not true. Sometimes you have to kind of mix it up. He's kind of giving me the science of storytelling. Like you have to give us some calm, give us time, our brain a chance to bring it down and just be able to just visualize and give us a place where nothing is happening and to be able to set up for the next action shot. Not everything has to be dynamic. Not every building has to be so weird, some weird angle, all curved up. You have to give your brain a rest. So
Right.
I started to understand that, and slowly but surely, as I was looking through a bunch of other stuff, he started giving me more artists to look at, a lot more European stuff. Now, really into a lot of European work after that, anyway. So a lot of Japanese, a lot of Chinese stuff I was looking at. So, and then I saw John Paul Leon, God rest his soul. So we were it was a mini competition between the both of us. We didn't realize, I looked at it, so it's like, oh my God, to break this man's hands. And then I understood that he was looking at myself going, who is this guy? Like, he said, yeah, he just started working the comics, like, not like about a month ago. He was like, really? He's drawing like that? He said, well, he went to school. He said, school of visual arts, but he was drawing like that anyway. Like, Matt Wayne's telling me all this stuff going back and forth. I'm like, really? So, but I was really, he was a really cool dude to kind of work around. And every single time he drew something, I was always picking up, trying to find out what he was looking at. And then I think there's a ton of stuff he was looking through, but Doug Weil is one of them. I'm trying to remember a couple of other guys that he was looking at, but some of it he was basically like, he was drawing just like him anyway. As soon as my brain starts to work, I basically just woke up. So as soon as my brain starts to wake up, I'll tell you who those guys are. But I think Wally Wood was another one he was looking at.
Yeah.
But I was looking at all these other guys that was showing you how to just tell a story, where to put characters in certain panels, how to make them move from right to left, left to right, because it's this American way of looking at things.
Right.
And at some particular point, I was looking at manga so much that I was actually starting to draw right to left. And basically, then it's like, you're going to have to remember that we're doing American comics. You need to switch that up. So it was just not something I was doing on purpose, just kind of, naturally graduated into that. Because if you're reading manga, you don't really understand the characters unless you know kanji.
Yeah.
But so you could tell they were really telling great stories, and you could understand it. You can just look at the panels. So that also taught me storytelling. So I had to use all that in order to try to get to a particular point where I know, look like people like Jorge Safino, whose stuff was amazing, stuff that Dennis Conn was looking at, whose son is also, if not just as good, if not better, just telling some really great stories, just box stuff, just a panel, square, and he just like very simply puts a character here and a character there, but the way it was shaped, the way he did like this situation where there's a lot of negative space and positive space. It was done in such an artistic way that you really couldn't like just blow past it and think like, oh, that's corny. Yeah, you couldn't pull that off. Cause my brain was always thinking rah rah rah, but his stuff was just like in shadow, stuff that the characters' faces would always be expressive. It was always moody, stuff you had to learn yourself. So I had a lot to draw from that put me in a particular place to be able to draw these books. But yeah, it was very very easy in one way, to draw all those characters, but it was definitely harder in order to keep pace, especially when they gave you a certain assignment for a certain amount of time to get it done. And you still had to be able to tell the story. And what was really cool is that me and Ivan basically grew up together, quote unquote, in comics and working on those books. I think he had the other two artists that worked with him didn't really kind of get what he was doing, but they were great at what they did. But I kind of added an extra oomph to it because I kind of put a lot of emotion. The characters kind of reacted a certain way. The characterization on their faces, the expressions, all matched what he was trying to put out there. So it was good to be able to bounce back and forth with him. But we had a lot of fun with that stuff, even though it was tedious.
I mean, it sounds like it was a great proving ground, right? Like for someone who's coming right into the industry and being able to, soak in all of this talent and the different formats and art forms, and then also being like just working it out on the page, right?
Right. But that's how it was back in the days. So independent comics, for the most part, were pretty much a proving ground before you got to the mainstream,
Right.
before you got to the big two. So if you were working, I don't know, like First Comics was one of the comic book companies back in the days, or Comico was another one. I don't think Dark Horse, I don't think had come out yet. That it was just about to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who put out Dynamo Joe. I think that might have been First Comics. But there are a lot of different comic companies that was out there back in the time. They started and kind of folded after a while. But Nexus was the big one. That was Steve Rude. So he was another guy that kind of got me into Andrew Loomis. So I started incorporating him into my work too. But these are all books that you had to start as a proving ground in order to show where your abilities were and how you got to grow your abilities. Like Adam Hughes is another one who started from independent comics and wound up becoming the icon that he is now also. So yeah, that's where it was. That's where it was then. Now it's like people who are working in comics for a long time that kind of want to break away, go back into doing their own stuff in independent comics. So kind of like this weird full circle.
Yeah. So after Milestone, you kind of bounced around a bit, right? So I think you did a book at Image, you did some more, some more Milestone maybe while you were there. But I wanted to ask about one book, which was Xero with Chris
Well,
Priest.
that was a situation where I worked with. I did kind of slow it down. So I did Blood Syndicate for a while. It's about maybe 30 issues of Blood Syndicate. And then from there, I kind of did some issues here and there with the other Milestone characters. But I did a book called The World Needs Heroes. And it was
Right.
basically Shadow Cabinet had basically folded at that point. And a lot of those characters, Static was another one. They basically came together and formed their own group. And to this day, I don't know what the name of the group was, but the book was called The World Needs Heroes. So Matt Wayne was writing the book. And I think I did about 5 issues of that. And then I wanted to graduate. I just kind of wanted to see what else was out there. And I wanted to get in some work at DC. And that's what brought in Christopher Priest doing Xero, Xero, for those who don't know. So that pulled me in. I was very intrigued about that because there was a couple of people who, there was a woman named Alison Morales, who's, I think, assistant editor up there in DC. She's working for the full editor, Dan Thorsland. And she hit me up and said they were doing this DC comic talent search, but it had a talent showcase back in the days where they put out, and they were having with a year, like every year they'll have a new talent showcase. It'd be one book, it'd be like an anthology, but it'd be with their characters. So myself, Joseph Illidge, and another guy I went to high school with named Caesar Itamate. We did a Dr. Light short story. It was the Japanese woman. That version, not the original Dr. Light.
Yeah.
So we're basically remaking her and kind of adding some really cool stuff to it based on, it's like a whole bunch of high school guys coming together and just doing a book like, back in the days. Let's just do a comic, we were getting paid for it. So they saw how we reacted together. They really, really loved the energy that we all had. So I was given a book Xero, and they said, if you want to jump on it, we can do this now. I said, I have no compunction to say no, right? So at some particular point, I met Christopher Priest, who's actually living nearby. I think he was living in New York at the time. We met in Jersey. We went to a diner, had some conversations about the book, what we're going to do, and everything else is just history after that. I did about 12 issues, about 10 issues of that. And then I think it was about 7 or 8 issues actually. And then I got connected with Marvel. And that's when I started doing X-Men. And then after I did X-Men, I got the hit to do Slingers.
Yep.
And then after Slingers, after I finished my stint with Slingers, which didn't go past 12, I think they wound up canceling after 12. I got the call to do Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
That was from Tom Brevoort. He pulled me in his office and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm not doing anything right now. I'm trying to finish up these last issues." He said, "Well, I need you to look at this stuff. I want to see if you can pull this off." I was like, "Okay, what do you have?" He said, "I have Janice Vell, Captain Marvel." I said, "Let's go." And I had the chance to do X stuff, and I turned that down for Captain Marvel. Some people thought I was crazy for doing that, but I was like, I mean, there was so many different X books out there. It was just like, okay, everybody's doing this stuff. I wanted to do something different. So I probably would a whole lot more well known if I did the X books. But at the same time, especially back then, because there was a royalty thing happening that was out of this world. But yeah, but I had fun working with Peter David with that stuff.
Yeah.
So it was like that when I started on the ground floor with, so to speak. That was after the Adventures Forever stuff.
So were you familiar with Peter David? Was like that a big draw for you to be on that
Yeah,
book?
I knew who he was. He wrote Sin Eater for the Spider-Man storyline, and that was
Yep.
my first intro into who he was. It might have been his first really big assignment at that point at Marvel, and I knew exactly who he was. So I figured he was very funny because he did some really cool stuff with Hulk at that particular point, and so he was writing a ton of other stuff at the same time. So, but this is kind of his baby, quote unquote. So I want to kind of put my all into that one.
Did you
So
like the concept? Because it was interesting that it was these sort of dual characters inhabiting one body, or maybe they're
well,
not
yeah.
both at the same time. But was
I
that
mean, I
like
knew
a
the
big?
lore. I
Yeah.
knew the lore. So the nega bands, you clang him, and then he would turn back to whoever was connected at the time. But I think it kind of got twisted a bit because, of course, Marvel had already passed away at that point. But they always kept hinting back and forth that he could always kind of come back, which I could not understand. That you have a character going through cancer, he passes away, but he's still kind of hinting at him. So, but yeah, the idea of a character like Rick Jones switching up with uh, a clone, I guess you want to say, of Marvel. Um, that was a pretty good writing device going back and forth. So, and basically the kind of comedic where they kind of went at each other was another thing that kind of added to the book because I don't think there was anything out there like that.
Yeah.
So, but I also put a lot of emotion, a lot of acting into it also, which is something else that I guess a lot of people hadn't really seen going through comics. It was nothing. I mean, just some of the subtle stuff about how characters do that had nothing to do with the script that kind of worked with it.
Yeah.
Whether if Rick Jones was tired of seeing something, he started rubbing his nose like, "Oh, okay, this is driving me nuts." I would draw stuff like little stuff on the side. Maybe Marlo, who was connected to him at the time, running a comic shop that basically looks like the one that I used to go to back in the days when it was kind of
Right.
out there, Jim Henson's universe. So, it's probably golden orange instead of golden apple, uh, which I think was also a comic shop in California, I think.
That
Um,
makes sense. Or Florida would make sense.
I think it's Cali. There's a golden apple, I think, out there, but they call it golden orange in the comics. And I use that as a really cool vehicle to pull all the people that I knew and drew them actually directly into those comics. So people who were working at the store, like my wife, then fiance, well, then girlfriend, her family would just show up at the store, just asking questions. And people they would kind of laughing like, "You drew me into a book, like I needed faces."
Yeah.
So, and the best
Well,
way to make sure everyone looks different is to bring people from different cultures in. So that's one of the great things that Milestone taught me is that, past the whole, inclusion thing before that was even a thing. I always wanted to make sure that someone was represented.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do remember now that I'm like smiling because I'm thinking back to the run and the book and thinking about the facial expressions, which were just so perfect and dynamic and really expressive and really
Right,
kind of told the story. And especially because you have the Peter David scripts, which are can be emotional but very funny.
right.
And so you really have to nail the facial expressions, and I think you did because I'm even thinking about them now. I remember some of them.
And I
So
really haven't had. I noticed like more lately. I think a lot of the work that I've been doing hasn't even called for. Even though I try to input them in there, but those things kind of those type of scripts that had some emotion, had some kind of I hate the word emotional intelligence, but uh, had a certain amount of I guess, a depth to it. I want to say
yeah,
that made
yeah,
you kind of get into expressions, making things more expressive. Uh, Being able to force put something down on paper that makes you go, okay, this character needs to act like this, or he or she's gonna be reacting in a certain way, kind of really flesh out that experience. I've been doing less and less of that nowadays. I didn't realize it until I guess like the last couple of years. So it's nowhere. The stuff that I've been doing is nowhere near as expressive as stuff I was doing back in those days. But you know, I mean, it's still there. I can still do it anytime I want. I just
right.
think it needs to be more called for. I think more people kind of write in a certain way that doesn't involve comedy, so to speak, because that's also a good portion of it too. When you have characters kind of acting uh, out of the norm and not just being the basic superhero stuff, but they're being human.
Right.
That kind of pulls more out of me to be able to make those characters act in a certain way.
Yeah,
And
makes sense.
that's something I think I've been doing less and less of, unfortunately. So we'll see going forward.
Okay.
Right.
Before we move off of Captain Marvel, I wanted to ask actually about the costume. So before your run, I think the character existed maybe only for like an issue or maybe for several issues, like as legacy, right? This I think it was
We
Mars
talking
and
about Captain Marvel, Gettysville, you
yeah,
talking about?
yeah, yeah, Janice Vell, right? So was there any discussion about keeping whatever that costume was? And if not, how did you come up with the new, how he was going to look basically in Captain Marvel?
I didn't create the look of that character. I just basically made him mine, quote unquote.
Right.
But
Okay.
Carlos Pacheco, late Carlos Pacheco,
Oh
he
yeah, that's
created the
right.
look of that character. That was from Adventures Forever.
That's right.
So I think that no, he didn't do that one. I was trying to figure out who wrote it. I was going to say Peter
Oh,
David.
who wrote
That
it?
was what's his name? My
Was
brain
it
is
Kurt
fart.
Busiek?
Yeah, Buziak, I think it is. Kurt.
Busiek? Yeah.
Hopefully, I said his name right. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was Kurt Buziak, and he did the art for that. But he created the look for that present Captain Marvel. So I just took it. I kind of added. I basically kind of changed the hairstyle a bit, but that was
Yeah.
about it. And it's made it a little hulkier. But
But
other than that, I don't know if he was actually drawn without the star effect, without that cosmic effect that he had, and I kind of created the look for him without all that. I mean, but
right.
he also had, but I mean, his face was kind of out there before he was turned into that because he had that weird '90s,
Yeah, yeah,
mask,
yeah. Yeah,
that
yeah.
hair that was
That's what I was
showing
gonna ask
up.
about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then he had the jacket on and the whole bit.
Right,
The
right, right, right.
one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
But
yeah,
yeah,
as time
the
goes on, you have to make the characters yours visually. So
oh for
uh,
sure.
the only thing I didn't really change anything. I just added more stars, I guess. I kind of added, like I said, I used my techniques, my style on to make it more of mine, but I still kind of follow what Carlos kind of did from the beginning here on in. So, you know, yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. But we had fun with it though.
Oh, for sure. I was gonna ask about the sort of Starfield aspect of that, if that was kind of a pain in the butt to draw, or was that sort of effects that were added kind of after?
Well, that's always after. I mean, if I was inking it myself, it'd probably be a whole different situation. But I just did just the pencil. So that means if I was going to be drawing something, I would kind of do the outline of where the shadow was going to go, unless I filled it in all the way. And now it's kind of, they have this thing we call X. You exit out
Oh, right.
versus
Yeah, yeah. For where
right.
the blacks are. Yeah.
Right for the blacks when you start to spot the blacks.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you could always say with stars, which would always be like XWS.
Ah,
So
okay.
whoever was inking it, whoever was going to put the star effects is usually the inker.
Got it.
And then
Yeah.
eventually it got to a particular point where the computers started coming in, more Photoshop stuff related stuff started coming in. So if you had a way to be able to create your own brushes in Photoshop, and you can start creating star patterns or star fields all over the place, you can probably do it in a computer too, without having to have the ink go through all that, getting that, dipping that brush, that toothbrush and pro whiteness, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
spraying all over the place.
Right.
But that stuff will never go. Those rudimentary ways to create effects like that never go away, because I do a ton of commissions now, and with the advent of Instagram and Twitter, well, X now, and
Yeah.
even Facebook, a lot of people do a lot of videos of their process, and they'll use whatever they have in order to create those effects. So it could be a brush that looks like it has no business being in ink, but creates these really nice lines. You're like, how's he doing these multiple lines? And that old brush is trash, but they found a way to use it as a technique to do something with create bark or create other kinds of textures. Anything that you could give your disposal in order to try to create an effect that you couldn't normally get anywhere else. It's always cool to watch you kind of flick, a bunch of any ink all over the place. The old school guys are still kind of doing it. So yeah, outside of using Procreate and using your Cintiq for your Clip Studio Paint stuff, or Photoshop, it's cool to be able to use the effects that the computer cannot or can actually replicate, but it just has more of a human feeling when you do it yourself.
Yeah. That
Right.
makes sense. Yeah, yeah. You can definitely. I like the word you use, texture. Right. I mean, you
Right.
can kind of tell when you
Right.
have that sort of man-made texture rather than what Photoshop can try to approximate.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's cool. Um, so after you had a really long run on Captain Marvel, and then you kind of bounced around DC, I think, for a while,
Well,
and
I bounced around. I did some image stuff. I did Midnighter. There's another one that I did. Probably like for an issue, and eventually I got Firestorm. I had done some JLA stuff that was supposed to become something bigger, but I got Firestorm instead of doing the JLA stuff. Um, and I did maybe about 5 or 6 issues of that, and that was kind of a fiasco. But I got to set a creative look for that character.
yeah.
Uh, that character was based off my brother, my youngest one of I think he was my youngest brother. So my youngest brother, if you get what I'm saying. So, but at that time he was like the youngest. So I used his face as the character for Jason Rush, and I was actively trying to make him out to be working with Milestone, you do a different looks. You want to be able to showcase not just black people, but black people of different hues. You know,
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
don't all come, looking at just dark skin or just brown, or some people light skin, some people more what you call it, down south of red bone, or someone who's a little bit more on the olive side. There's different. We call it different flavors. Uh, of people. We all have people who are black have different looks, different colors, different hues, different types of different amounts of melanin, depending on who they're coming from. So I wanted to kind of try to depict that, because at that particular point, it was his father was supposed to be dark skinned, but his mother was supposed to be light skinned. But his mother had passed away from some sickness, some such like that. So it was a situation where I wanted to make sure that he was an amalgamation of both. And I wanted to make sure that he looked like his father, but he had his mother's hue, her mother's skin color.
Right.
So that meant he was light skinned. He had freckles on him, and but his father kind of had some issue with him because he kind of did look like his mother in some ways. You know, he was pretty hard on him. So I wanted to try to depict that. And there was issue with that back in the day. So we don't know how to color him. He may look white. Like, what does that mean? Just come up with a color, you know? Like, I mean, at that time, there's a color artist, a colorist named Andrew Crossley. Yeah, Andrew Crossley. He was doing a color work. We would go back and forth, and I was sending him like these color swatches of what would be a good hue for someone who's light-skinned black, you know, a light-skinned black man. So he matched them to a T, and every single time he sent it to them, they would send it back. So it was like, why would you do that? Like, he said, well, we want him to color it darker. I said, well, I don't want him to color it darker. The idea of making sure that Jason Russell's like his mother and his father is this concept called, you know, DNA.
Yeah,
melanin.
Right.
So I knew this back then. So I'm like, I'm trying to depict it so that the first time you see this character, based on the way I would draw characters, they always had a real world look to them anyway. So if I'm drawing a black man, if I'm drawing a man who's Latin American of some sort, if he was more European, if he was more Afrocentric, I have always had a serious molecular detail about making sure that that person looked like he was ethnic in some way, shape, or form. Whether he looked like he was a white man from Europe or a black man from, I don't know, not just Zimbabwe, but a brown man from India. They all had their own look to them. So I wanted to make sure that was depicted when even you color him blue, he's gonna look like a black man. So that was my argument going back and forth. And I think that was part of the thing that kind of made me bow out because basically you telling me all that stuff, basically saying that my skin is trivial. You know, I understand DC is not like that now. I mean, you still had to kind of pull a lot of the old people, the old guys that I guess you call them the old guard. You had to kind of pull them screaming into the president, which was president then. Now you have no problem with that. To this day, I still don't think I've seen any licensed characters created in comics, to tell you the truth. I mean, you know, when they do people of color, when I was doing the new version of the Blood Syndicate, we had that conversation. So that a guy who's black and one character is black didn't look like the same. If Y-Sun was in one panel and another character was in another planet that happened to be also be dark skinned, he didn't look like him. Yeah, like visually. So we had that conversation, and the colors pulled off perfectly. But it was easier now to get it done than back then.
Right. Yeah, both it's easier because the people that are involved, I'm sure, and also easier because of the consistency of the color and
have more of a verse. The political and I guess you want to say real world verse.
Right.
When it comes to about who looks like who now and who should be represented now. In some cases, a little too much, I say, but I wanted to make sure that the characters, every single character that was ever put in those books had their own look to them. Even if they were, you know, even white men, they all have the same hues. You know, there's some more beige, some more olive skin, some more red, so you know, some have a little bit more pale. You know, some of them probably more on the brown side too, depending on where they come from. So I mean, we all come from the same place anyway, so that's kind of the thing you want to kind of depict.
Yeah. I mean, it makes it more relatable, right?
Right. But because they're psychologically, you should feel that I just saw that guy walking down the street. That looks like my uncle. Or my mother looked. I thought someone that looks just like my mother in those panels. Who did that? You know.
Right.
I kind of wanted to have that aesthetic going forward.
Yeah. So even though the experience of the comic Firestorm was maybe not not the best, were you excited or not excited when the character shows up in the CW shows?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I just wish they had done it the way I put it together. But at that particular point, there were other artists that jumped on afterwards, and they kind of made the character their own too. So I guess they wanted the most present version of what the character looked like at that point.
Right.
But I had before I started working on Firestorm, I must have went through at least 7 or 8 different types of designs in order to make him look a certain way, and none of them look like that character, the one that
Mm.
wanted to get put out there. But I think I was so far cosmic that they didn't. They were just like, "How are we gonna? If we make toys out of it, how are we gonna do this? Like, I'll show you. Like, I'll draw it out for you. Like, it's not that hard, right?" But my thought was, my contribution to the character was, they always call him the nuclear man, and I never understood that because nothing about his powers are nuclear. He was quantum,
Yeah,
right?
that is true.
So
Yeah.
he always went to his work. Everything about him was next level, right? So it was a situation where he had to use his, in order for him to turn into the actual character, he had to use the biological material of someone else, to combine into that character,
Mm.
right? And then when he was finished, he would kind of release them, and he would turn back into Jason Rush.
Right.
So basically, I mean, if you think about it, there's a biblical concept to that. It was, if you're a person who, the idea of biblically, you die and you shed that old skin, you shed the human skin, you're sent to become an angelic figure. So you're not looking like the way you did when you were on Earth.
Right.
So I wanted to use that as a part of the concept for who he was. Like, he didn't just turn to this guy who just had a flame on his head, and he just had he was just this guy in this costume. I want to make sure that he looked like an elemental,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a man who could break down matter and reshape the whole Earth if he wanted to. He just had to know how to do it. I mean, he was literally reshaping, turning things from uh, gold to silver, or he could turn it to food if he wanted to. Which is why I couldn't understand when he would show up and Batman would show up. They always had him kind of cringe, like, oh, like, what are you talking? You can turn him into cheese. Like, Batman can have the biggest attitude he wants to. Like, shut up, I'll turn you into cheese.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have to listen to you. Like, they always kind of did that stuff. So by the time we wound up, me and Dan Jolly,
Uh-huh.
started reworking that character. That character was doing some stuff that normally no one had really ever thought of. Like, we called, I forgot what we called the area where in his mind, I guess in his mindscape, so to speak, where the character, once he absorbed another character, another person on the street. I mean, it could be a homeless dude. The essence of that character would be connected to what we call brain trees. But it's really
Uh-huh.
just neurons. They couldn't walk around anywhere. They're just kind of stuck. So he's kind of, I guess, sapping from them in a way. And I forgot. So I thought it was like, was it called a neuroscape or something like that? I have to come back to me.
Like a
But
neural network.
no, but we had something scape at the end.
Something.
It was a word that
Oh,
we were
okay.
looking.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, Jason Rush would be talking to whoever was connected to that brainstem, that neuron, the neuron stem, that tree.
Right.
And he's walking around from on like arcing lightning or electricity that basically was on his brain somewhere. And he'd be free to walk wherever he wanted. But anyone else that was kind of absorbed into his space would be connected to that tree. He couldn't go anywhere. So that was something that he and I kind of came up with. So
Yeah.
even the point where even Jason Rush was staring at some kind of device that JLA gave him. I think it was Green Lantern gave him. I'm trying to miss which, but they gave him one day. They said we were watching you, and anytime you want to be a part of us, let us know. If they figure, I guess he's that powerful, we have to make sure he's on our side.
Right.
So they gave him this device, and while he's sitting on his bed, he's staring at it. And as he's staring at it, he's literally peering away through the layers. He has been able to look down to the quark level to see what this thing looked like. And I had to kind of create the look of that in panel form.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that he was doing. Like, people weren't really doing stuff like that back then. So, we had fun with that character. But I noticed they weren't going to do anything like that in CW.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, they're also, I think it was, Well, I don't know. Did he start in Flash and then he went into Legends of Tomorrow? They were also balancing so many
Do you
different
realize how funny it
characters.
was that he wanted to be a light skin anyway?
Yeah.
The character, the first character that they created, the first actor that they picked up, I can't remember his name. I haven't seen him since, but he became Firestorm, and he was a light skinned dude. So I was kind of chuckled at that. So
They
they
did it
wanted
anyway.
they want wound up picking up the guy that will be
Right.
light skinned Jason Rush, but they had problems coloring a light skinned character back then.
Right. Yeah.
Or they had problems allowing it to happen because they thought he would just look white. I'm like, what did you hire me for if you think I'm going to make him look white?
Right.
Like, you know, I'm good at doing facial. I would say facial, not just
Structure.
expressions, but you know, just
The
the
structure.
look, right, the
Right.
structure, the ethnicity. I'm good
Yeah.
at doing
Yeah. Right.
ethnic characters, so that's why you hired me. So why would I give you a character that looked white no matter how you color it?
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me. So I just kind of chuckled at that. I thought that was pretty funny. But eventually, funny enough, I think it was Robbie Amell that was the first Firestorm. I think he was playing
Right. He was playing the
right
I don't even remember the
Ronnie. He was
character's
playing
name. Ronnie. Yeah, Ronnie
Ronnie
something.
Raymond. It was.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was the first RR. So yeah, he was the first one. So and then I eventually brought in Jason Rush, what I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Uh, it was weird to see something that you helped create put onto the screen, but he didn't look anything like the way I created him. I think at that point, he had gone through at least 4 or 5 different renditions before they finally got him to the CW version. And
Yeah.
even then, if you remember the CW, they never really did accurate versions of those characters anyway. They always had like a
No.
street version.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely had a look like CW, kind of. They
Yeah,
definitely, once they hit upon like Green Arrow and Flash, and I think, and Black Canary and whatever, you could almost like see what they would do with other characters when they had them. It just
right,
became a very uh formulaic like translation of what the comic was.
right.
So yeah, they were once they got on that train, they were not gonna sort of go back to like comics accurate stuff, I think.
True, true. And they had the colors of the characters, but they didn't have the costumes.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So Green Arrow was wearing green, but he didn't look. He was probably the most closest to a looking like a superhero than anybody else there. Anyway, I mean, until they got Flash there,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
because even then was it Flash? Then you look like the comics accurate version of it, but then of course when he started going, we started getting to the movie version with Zack Snyder's version. I'm like, what is this pieces parts thing they put together? Like that, there's nothing aerodynamic about that costume. The one with Ezra Miller, the very first, when you first see him in
Yeah,
JLA or
right,
Justice League, I should say.
right.
So I couldn't understand that either. Just costume design, people didn't have. You have to kind of think about this before you do it.
Yeah. No, they were definitely
I,
not looking
cool.
for practical, functional kind of, real world concerns. It was like whatever Zack Snyder thought was
Right,
cool.
right. And I would think, I mean, I'm pretty sure he just allowed it to happen, but there was no way he came up with that concept. Right? Someone just said, "How about we do this?" And he probably said, "That's cool.
Right.
Let's work with that."
Yeah.
And like I said, I have no issue with Zack Snyder. I love the stuff that he does for the most part. Although I guess it's fun to kind of punch at him, but uh, there's not a lot of people doing stuff the way he's doing it. And if that brother just uh, allowed some extra writers kind of help him flesh some stuff out more. Even though I
Right.
think the version of Justice League that he did, the one that he did, not the one that
Yeah.
was co-opted and kind of blown to bits,
Yeah.
that was done pretty well. If it's fully realized, yeah, I think his stuff would be unstoppable. Really, if you got just people would just help to, if he had someone who could just do some genius scripts and he just kind of stay out the process just a little bit, it would be he'd be unstoppable.
Yeah. I agree with
But
that.
yeah, but going back to the costume stuff, yeah, the CW stuff. I started doing I did some with Smallville after the 10th season. They started doing seasons in comic form. And I did the 11th season. I did the one with Batman.
Oh, okay.
The CW version of Batman. And I
Yeah,
came
yeah.
up, yeah, or I should say it's a Smallville version of Batman.
Right.
And I still kind of miffed about that because it wasn't colored the way I wanted it to be colored because it made it look a little weird, too bright,
Uh-huh.
like the way I kind of put them together. I even said it so he had like face paint on. So you put the mask on, his face looked the same as the same colors as a black mask. It's kind of like this nice war paint.
Right.
And his I think most of his costume supposed to be like from black to very, very dark gray. And it didn't come out that it was they put some kind of light gray so where he had these chest plates on that didn't make sense. I was like, oh well, here we go again. So but I wanted to make sure he looked a certain way in the way I thought he should look with the I guess quote unquote limited budget that they had in order to create those characters. But this is comics, so you do what you want. So I kind of pushed it to another level. But I had fun doing that also. But I think I've only did about maybe three or four issues of that too. I mean, it's supposed to be a limited run before they got to like the 12th season and the 13th season and stuff like
Right.
that. So, but we had fun with that too. So I think it was a female. Well, it was a female Nightwing. So I think I forgot which one it was, but who they used as which character they used. But we had fun with that, and I got to create my own Batmobile,
That's
which
cool.
was very very cool. I gave it like 6 wheels, like
Why
two.
not?
I think the front, yeah, the back, they're two big back wheels, and it really some really really cool. It looked like this massive streetcar,
Right.
and but it had these like three freaking drivetrains. It was crazy.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at those issues.
Yeah,
I didn't see those. Those passed me by.
and that was if you can find it, the guy who was writing it. I think the guy who was writing was also a screenwriter for I think some CW stuff.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, there was one
Interesting.
scene where I think Superman got shot with a kryptonite bullet, and Batman had grabbed him and put him into his picked him up and threw him into his Batmobile. And the first thing you see is that Batmobile busting out of this building, kind of sliding towards you and then zooming past you. And then like all these people like trying to follow him because they didn't know who Batman was at the point. It's like his first time being showing up in the CW Smallville universe.
Yeah.
So automatically they think he's this terrible dude. So he's driving, trying to operate on soups at the same time while the car is kind of driving himself. And there's this one scene where he's driving down the street taxiing, like Lois Lane's on the motorcycle, so is Green Arrow, and a couple other people kind of trying to catch up to him because she's thinking he's kidnapping Clark in order to kill him or something. So, but he's trying to operate him and allowing the Batmobile to kind of do a driver assist. And there's one particular part where there's, I think it was Metropolis, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was Metropolis. The Metro Police was kind of trying to block and cordon off the roadway so he couldn't be able to go where he needed to go, kind of alter his trajectory. And he did something with the Batmobile that basically made it jump up into the air like the Speed was the Mach 1.
Right. Speed Racer car.
Like
Yeah.
Speed Racer, and it kind of crunched and sort of morphed and it jumped up into the air, and then it changed its look. Like it started to kind of spin, like the turbine started to spin, like the wheels kind of spinning around like a helicopter.
Right.
And it went over them, and then landed back down again, back into its original form. Doing right past it, it looked like what the hell did you just see? But I had to kind of animate that.
Right.
Stuff that I added to it because the writer didn't think of that. And when he saw it, he was like, "Oh my god, I wish I thought of that." So that's the stuff I would do. I kind of add stuff to it, but I want people to see Bats as like this the evil genius when it came to technology. Where does he buy this stuff? All these beautiful toys.
Yeah, where did you get these wonderful
Where
toys?
did he get these wonderful toys?
Have you
So
ever done any what's it called for the movies and film storyboarding?
I did some. I didn't do a lot of storyboarding, but I did a lot of some storyboard for commercial stuff too.
Oh, okay.
But I wouldn't mind doing something. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot less work than doing comic stuff. You don't have to do you know, full art drawings. There, you just have to do the idea.
Right. But you're
So
describing that sequence with the Batmobile. I was like that you're sort of like that sort of sounds like storyboarding. I mean, the comics are in a way a little
in
bit
a
like
way, yeah,
storyboarding anyway.
they're both similar, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And depending on how you do it too. But
Right.
the way I kind of draw things, I always kind of have this fluidity to tell a story in a certain way, so that your brain sees it moving. It's not never just static. And when I want you to be static, I want you to see something that I want you to see. I'll of course make it just that picture in time, that one snapshot. But if it's
Yeah.
moving, your brain has to be able to trick itself into psychologically seeing that move in your head.
Right. Right.
You have to animate that. So that's what I want. I wanted to make sure that sequence, especially, I was actually proud of that sequence. But I didn't have a lot of time to get it done the way I wanted to. But I definitely took my time on that one. I know a couple of
Worth
YouTubers
it.
who are doing some comic reviews who happened to who had managed to pick up that story and saw that particular sequence. They'll say, people say, ChrisCross is mad genius. I don't even know how he pulled this off. I was like, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
All right. I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. All right, before we wrap up, and you already pointed one out, but I wanted to give you the opportunity because you've had a long career and we've only gotten to a fraction of it. Are there any projects that you worked on that besides the Smallville one that you just told us about that you feel like particularly proud of that maybe didn't get the wider audience that you think it should, that people should kind of go back and look for?
Gee. Uh, uh, I don't know how many people picked up the latest version of the Blood Syndicate stuff that I did, but I think they should pick that up. Um, I've been doing a lot of short story stuff because purposely I've been trying to get my own stuff ready to go.
Yeah.
But let's see. There's a book I did with Dark Horse called Bank Shot.
Hmm.
That was literally supposed to be a movie, but that kind of fell out of favor. So we'll see how that goes in the future. I mean, there's a chance it could still happen. I just have to do some pressure, see how it goes. But me and the writer Alistair Campy, we came up with this. She came up with the concept of this really cool a guy who was I think he was a Marine or Army. He was in Desert Storm, I think it was, fighting in the Middle East. Wanted to come across some guy from I say United Nations type that I forgot what they call it, that basically the type of force that they usually deploy whenever something bad happens. They'll come to me, but
Hmm.
not like Red Cross, but it was like the United Nations have their own, but they had this one particular guy who was like this freaking, he was just like this desperate. And basically he was basically raiding people, raiding temples and taking going to palaces after they were destroyed and take all the rich bounty from it and put it in a truck somewhere and try to drive off with it with his people. They had this small amount of mercenaries that was just going around causing trouble and kind of basically capitalizing off of it. And he discovered it, and then basically he got shot in the back, and then he wound up being filled up with some kind of nanites in this hospital from this weird, crazy doctor. And basically, he saw that whenever he was going to be able to kind of get into battle, his body kind of turned, his skin kind of turned into this armored like nano, this kind of nanobot type deal. I would think it was some kind of nano armor
Right.
that's activated through his skin. But and it made him stronger. It made him fast. It made him like this crazy fighter. And plus, he's I think he was a multi-billionaire because he stole these barrel bonds from these guys and utilized it, to finance his own campaign. So if you wanted something done, you come to this guy.
Yeah.
I think it was a really, really cool concept.
Cool.
So, but it's out there somewhere. If you look at it, it's called Bank Shot.
Bank Shot. All right. Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah. So it was 5 issues. It's collected as it's one volume. So you get all 5. I'm sure it's on Amazon too. But it collected to one volume. I think it's a really cool story. And it was a good. Hopefully, maybe at some point, kind of set up another version of it. I could be a part of that too. But I think I had a lot of fun with that one.
Cool. Yeah, definitely look that one up too. That sounds really fun. So, Chris, let me know if other than the creator-owned stuff, and maybe you're putting all your energy into that. Is there anything else fans can look forward to from you this year? Things that you got cooking?
Well, right now, me and my Joseph Illidge, who's a big time writer. He's really working his way to becoming a really big time writer in the industry. But he was a DC editor at the Batman office also. Yeah. He, if you don't know him, you should pick up his work. NPLS, that's one of them. He's done a lot of other stuff, but
yeah, we had him on actually.
Did you? Okay, good.
Yeah. So, good guy.
I know him since high school, so we've been buddies since then. So basically, he and I coming up with a concept called the Winterfields. That's going to be coming out this year. Well, we're going to be working on this year, but it's going to be coming out in 2025, like a 125 page graphic novel. That's going to be a trip doing that much work. Yeah. But it's going to be through Fabrice Sapolsky's FairSquare Comics. At the end of this month, it's going to be like the first salvo was like a 6-pager. It's a espresso, like show the origin of these characters. Not really origin, but kind of give you a taste of what these characters are all about. And that's coming out at the end of the month through Black is a New Noir. That's going to be the anthology that's coming through FairSquare. So that's one of them. But that's going to take up most of my year anyway. So yeah, that's creator-owned also. So between he and I. So I think it's going to be a really cool thing. It's going to take place in 1920s Harlem. And basically going to be a guy who's an ex-military officer who basically is kind of taking up, I guess it's like a bodyguard. He has a son that he kind of brings in tow. And unfortunately, his son has to grow up in a rough way of doing things like his father does. He had to learn pretty early. Kind of like a lone wolf for cub type situation. I'm sure Joe will have his own like road to perdition type situation. Right. It's got kind of a lot of different concepts mixed into it, but I'm sure Joe will give you a whole litany of like what he was thinking about when he put it together. But I think it's a very cool father-son concept that is totally missing in comics, because I don't know of any other than Lone Wolf and Cub that actually does something like that. So, and I said we should definitely harp on that. Mm-hmm. So you have to see for yourself. I think it's coming out January 31st. So when you get a chance, I'm sure you'll be doing more press upon that. So when you get a chance, you at least check out those 6. It's like a 6-pager in the midst of a whole bunch of other stories that's collected in an anthology piece. So that should be like the first salvo that kind of sets up what's going to happen with that particular graphic novel.
And we're back. Hey, everybody. What did you think of that interview? I really enjoyed talking to Chris. He has a lot of great stories. He's been all around the industry, and we're really looking forward to that new graphic novel that will be coming out next year named Winterfields. Now, you can get the sample story of that graphic novel coming up on January 31st. That's next Wednesday from when you're hearing this. And it is comes out from FairSquare Comics in their new anthology, or rather a sort of a remixed, improved version of their anthology called Noir is the New Black. So that's what you want to look up on January 31st. Noir is the New Black. The story from Joe Illidge and ChrisCross is called The Winterfields. You will want to read it. I'm sure you will get hooked, and they're going to be working on a hugely expanded version of that again for 2025. So that'll do it for this episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for viewing. Please rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us grow. And we will see you next issue. Peace.